Caleb Williams, not necessarily competing for the starting job, showing his skill today, his obvious talent. But is he the type of quarterback, or is there enough of a differentiation in his skill set versus Spencer Rattler for it to be valuable to possibly build some type of package for him to get into the games and be a different threat, maybe down near the goal line than Spencer?
Yeah, I think so. He's a bigger kid. He's a faster kid. I think one of the things, very first play from scrimmage, he had a zone read where he kept the ball on the outside for about 17, 18 yards, and it was a quick 17, 18 yards. So I think absolutely to your point, Mark, I would really be surprised if there's not some packages for Caleb Williams, especially later in the year. When defenses start to catch up with you a little bit on the offensive side. So from an unpredictability perspective, I would be surprised to not see, some of those heavy run packages, especially when you think about teams inside the 5, inside the 10, in the goal line situations that you'll see Caleb Williams in the game. I think it's very difficult to not like we talked about a little bit, not overreact to one single practice, one single scrimmage. But I think the fact that he was very decisive today, I think the fact that a lot of times younger kids, they don't have the experience, so they'll be very quick to run out of the pocket, especially if they're really good runners and really tough runners, and kind of use their legs to their advantage. I think with Caleb Williams, he was very patient in the pocket. He looked like a guy that had been on campus for quite a few years. Maybe a sophomore, junior kid that's been in the system. So I think let's not get too carried away here and thinking that he's a guy that needs to be on the field in terms of being a starting quarterback. I think he'll certainly get his opportunities this year, in some games, and I think exactly to your point, Mark, there'll be some packages where he'll get on the field, but he's certainly not going to be a kid that's going to take anybody's job immediately.
Yeah, let's understand that while these quarterbacks coming out of high school are more prepared today than they ever have been in the history of the sport, just because they watch so much film and they're prepared and they treat it almost like professionals from the high school ranks, if they're that talented and are given the coaching and the grooming that that type of athlete is given, and they go to all the camps, and again they receive the best coaching and they travel around to go to these camps, so they're better prepared than ever. And we see it all the time with freshman quarterbacks, but it is still a huge undertaking and a huge ask to put a true freshman quarterback in the lineup at a place like Oklahoma and have them perform. It's still to their best, to their benefit, most likely, to get that time on campus, because we treat it as football players, and that's it.
Right.
They are going to class. They have to adjust their entire life to something that they've never experienced before. So
Sure.
it's a huge adjustment.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I guess it's incredibly impressive to see, what he's been able to do, early on. We talked about this a little bit, that he, because of the oddness of the season, he's going through spring, taking classes at Oklahoma, and still taking classes, high school classes as well. So for a lot to be put on his shoulders, I think he's handled it extremely well. Specifically, talking about how he's played here early on, but to your point, how difficult it is for a true freshman to get on the field and start. I mean, especially specifically if you're talking about starting game one, you have to look at this kid, and you have to, as a coach, you have to really kind of tell yourself, this kid has to be head and shoulders better than the guy that we have. Look at a guy named Trevor Lawrence. How highly recruited he was, and how great of a college football player that he was. He wasn't even good enough to play. Certainly, he played later in the year. He took that job, but at game one, he wasn't the starter. So there's not a whole lot of kids that can come in and play immediately from day one. But this is a guy that will certainly play a lot I think, in his career, I think he's certainly the next great one that Oklahoma should have. I mean, and I think fans should be proud of the fact that, or happy, thrilled with the fact that, they have two really, really good quarterbacks on campus, and, they're not going to go wrong. And I think that, I think the coaches would, if you really kind of put a truth serum inside of the coaches, I think what they would love to see is Rattler have a really good year this year. Maybe not win the Heisman, but just have a really, really productive year. Maybe he makes that decision to go pro, and then it's Caleb Williams' team next year. I think that's, in the perfect world, like what they would like to see happen. Because, I mean, as we have talked about from a transfer perspective, a kid that is this good, he's probably not going to wait 2 years. So, I think if you have a situation where, maybe Rattler doesn't have a great year, or he decides he wants to come back another year, if Oklahoma's not able to win the national championship, then I think you have a serious, I wouldn't say problem on your hands, but something that has to be discussed, because these kids, they're not, especially ones that know that they can start pretty much anywhere across the country, even at a blue blood school, that they're not going to want to sit around very long.